If you like quick, cheap and easy scenery, well then today I'm going to show you how to make some awesome haystacks for your wargaming and role-playing games. If you haven't already, do please like and subscribe. I think we can probably all agree that no matter how good our games are, the scenery can really just make them that much better. And so if we can come up with methods to make cheap and affordable, quick and easy terrain, then it just makes everything work so much better. So to start off with, we need to prep the materials. So I've got this twine, which I got from the hardware store, and I chopped it down to about ½ inch, 1.5 centimeter lengths. I wasn't particularly accurate, just chopping them down roughly. Then I untwisted it and got it into quite fine fibers. It took about half an hour. I was just watching a bit of TV at the same time, and then once it was done, it gets quite nice and fine. It would also probably be quite useful for static grass, so future video coming soon. Next up, it's the basing. You can use basically whatever you've got to hand: cardboard, foam core, core flute, just anything that's quite sturdy. And then for the actual stacks themselves, I've got this wire wool, and so I ripped it up into little bundles. You can scale this to whatever you want. Most of my miniatures are around the 15mm scale, so I've made the stacks about as tall as a person. And then I drilled some little holes into the basing and then stuck these little skewers in, because that's just going to be the support for the whole structure. Then using the hot glue, I stuck a bit around the base of each of the poles just to make sure that they wouldn't come out, because at this point they were just pushed in. And once they've had a moment to dry, then it's time to actually get to work sticking the wire wool onto each of the poles. So give them a good dose of glue onto the pole, and then just wrap your wire wool around in a rough sort of stack shape, if you know what I mean, sort of an acorn shape. This wire wool pulls apart quite nicely. It's not too full, like thick strands. It's quite loose, so it's quite easy to work with. And once you're finished, it's quite easy to snip down just to keep the shape that you want. But just take your time, unravel it, and yeah, get the things to where you want it to be. Each of the skewers which I put in, again, I measured them to be roughly the right height of the miniatures, so that way I knew what sort of size the stacks should be for when I put the fibre wool on. I mean the wire wool on, sorry. Then once they're all done, the next step is to start getting the basing done. You could probably do this in advance. In hindsight, I probably would have done, but what I've done here is I've mixed up my wood glue with a bit of brown, just so that way it does 2 in 1, and just paint that on all over the miniature. I would say, depending on the material you're using, if you've got a thirsty fabric or material like cardboard, you will either need to do it in sections or go thick. If you're using this material, which I'm using, I do not know what it's called, other than it's not foam core, but it's almost like foam core. It doesn't really soak it up. It does a little bit around the sides, but not on the tops. So if you're planning on basing them quickly, just before you put it into the flock box, just make sure that everything's still wet. Then, as I say, stick it in the flock box and put your flock over the top. Try and avoid getting flock into the wire wool itself, because then it's a bit of a nuisance to get back out, but it's not the end of the world if it happens. So just take it easy and flock the bases as best you can. That gets us to the stage where we've got our stacks ready, base is done. Next up, I waited for the base to actually dry before I moved on to the next step. Again, I've got the same sort of glue mix with the brown paint. Again, hindsight, I would, instead of using brown, I would have used more of a creamy yellow, a hay colour basically. But the brown's fine. All we're doing is painting that onto the wire wool. That way it's giving us a nice base coat in that rather than metal, silver, grey, whatever you want to call it. It's more of a natural colour. But then we're also next going to be putting on our actual hay materials, which is the chopped up strands of cordage from earlier. So just take your time, and my tip here is more is better. Don't go sparingly, really slap it on to each of the stacks, because you really want the fibres to have something to stick into. And then what I started trying to do was like wrap it round to see if that would work, so it could point in at the top. That was the initial plan, but then by the time I got through them all, it was literally just grabbing clumps and just sticking it into it. Again, the wire wool is it's got flex to it, so you don't need to be particularly careful, just shove it on and it's pretty forgiving. I was quite surprised actually how much of the strands it did use. So when you're doing your prep period, again, more is better. If you've got leftovers, you can use it on another project, but it's better than getting halfway through and running out. Then just take a little bit of time just to titivate around and try and get everything looking smart. So what do you think? I think they've come out pretty well for a first time. In hindsight, I'd probably give them a bit more of the flocking, and as you can see, the dark brown shows through, so I would say go with a yellowy cream as a base coat to the stacks, but I'm happy with them. I think they look good, and on the table they'll do the trick. I feel that creating your own scenery, not only is it fun and enjoyable in and of itself, but it also gives you that unique individual aspect for your gaming tables, that you know that it's all been done by you, which is quite a cool thing, I think. I'm not sure if you agree. Let me know down below. It would also be great if you guys could share any of them that you make yourselves on the Facebook page, just so that everyone can get involved and see what we're all working on. Also, if you've got any other suggestions for future videos, please leave the comments down below, just like normal, because I'm always interested in giving them a crack. Anyway, till next time guys, I hope you take care, keep gaming,